As James Carville once said to me, the thing about running for office is it's kind of like having sex. Once you do it, you kind of want to do it again.
Is that what having sex is like? Yeah, there are a million better examples you could draw there, like eating Pringles, like smoking crack. Yeah, once you do it once, you want to do it again. I don't know. My man, Dr. Andrew Yang, he's got a PhD in being dank, recently went on Tucker Carlson Tonight, and I haven't seen any of it. I've only seen some folks complaining about it. I want to take a peek, okay? Let's find out what they're up to, you know? Andrew Yang recently announced that he's no longer a Democrat, but an independent, came out with a third party that isn't a party yet, but is instead a PAC. Not left, not right, but forward, with very few policy prescriptions and a, let's say, flagging understanding of how politics even works as a concept.
The person, the political figure who is making the most sense on this subject, who has thought about it most deeply, is a Democrat who is running for president. He's Andrew Yang. He's an
Wait! This is the old interview. How could you fuck up so bad? By me being in a towel 7 minutes before stream started, pulling up all the links as a reminder to what I need to do today. Let me find the full thing. Is the full thing seriously fucking paywalled? Want to use my account? Are you fucking kidding me, Shu? Apparently there's a re-upload on YouTube. Yep, okay, this is it. I am but a leaf blowing in the wind. Yeah, looks like it, Shu. Looks like you showed your whole ass for no reason. All right! Let's not waste a moment more. Tucker Carlson, looking fantastic. As always, pretending to be a member of the working class with wood walls behind him, wearing what I will assume is a $10,000 button-up shirt. Let's go!
Carlson Today. You probably hadn't heard of Andrew Yang 4 years ago, and then out of nowhere, he announced for president of the United States and became remarkably popular for a time. He didn't win, but he went on to run for mayor of New York City. He didn't win there either, but he made a splash in the process. And the one thing we learned about Andrew Yang, as often as we disagreed with him, was this was one of the very few people running for.
Hey, why you gotta run down his fucking L list? The whole guy, it's like, you know? And when Andrew Yang was in 6th grade, he did a spelling bee. He lost that as well, but he made a splash in his pants when he peed himself on stage after failing to spell discombobulate.
For office, who is interesting, who has his own ideas, who's thinking about the world and what it ought to look like going forward. He's put a lot of those thoughts in a new book. It's called Forward Notes on the Future of Our Democracy. We are happy to have Andrew Yang in our studio today. Andrew Yang, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Tucker. It's great to be here.
So you just came off this kind of, well, let me just start at the beginning, this whirlwind where you announced for president and for the mayor of our biggest city. And so you just had this incredibly intense series of experiences.
It's been a strange few years.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
A little shell shock. So typically people announce for president of the United States after a long career of chicken dinners, you know, ascending the ladder in some sort of linear way, office to office to office to office. Joe Biden did this.
Hold on. Are you guys hearing that audio? Is that actually audio from incredibly wealthy and powerful political pundit Tucker Carlson's studio?
You did not do this. Why did you decide
you
wanted to
running
run
in
for
the
president?
background? What is
what
that?
gave you the impression that you could win?
I worked in technology and entrepreneurship.
Could be the re-upload? Maybe. It should corresponds to when their mics are active, you know? I don't know.
For over a decade, both as an executive and founder, and then as the CEO of a nonprofit I'd started, Venture for America. And that work took me to Michigan, Ohio, Alabama, Louisiana, Missouri, and I was convinced that we were undergoing the greatest economic transformation in our country's history, and it was upending the labor market. And our political class really either didn't understand it or didn't want anything to do with it. So I decided to run for president because I wanted to advance what I saw as real solutions, like a universal basic income that would help millions of Americans transition. It was an act of service on my part. I thought I could make a contribution.
Mandatory trans
So
people.
what's interesting is you, and you came on our show in the spring of 2019 to talk about that, and there was a big overlap between your views on this and the views that we were espousing on the show at the time.
Okay, I have to assume that there's no way audio like this would ever get by the production team, and this is probably the person who recorded this had dual channels open on their OBS. They had their mic open as well, and they decided to shave their pubes with an electric trimmer while watching this. That's the only explanation I have.
About, like, what do you do when
the robots can freaking do a lot of the work?
That's
that
exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, totally.
So then you run for president, you run for mayor, which is a different thing because you're running a city, right, if you win. But that
it's okay, Tim.
message, which was really about economics and the value of labor versus the value of capital, kind of receded. Like, nobody really wanted to talk about that, I've noticed. Why?
Well, it didn't fit the political narratives or the media narratives of the day, and it certainly didn't seem very ideological. And that's one of the things that I learned, Tucker, is that I'm a business guy and
Okay, never mind, Shu. Give me the login.
Economics guy, a technology guy, and so to me it's straightforward. You lose 4 million manufacturing jobs to a combination of technology and globalization. It's going to devastate many communities. That's not ideological. That's just practical.
Right.
That's reality. But for whatever reason,
and that's an undisputed fact, right?
Yeah, it's undisputed fact. I mean, you could try and parse out exactly why the 4 million manufacturing jobs were eliminated. You could say it was more globalization or more automation, but it's indisputable, and the ratio, is in some ways secondary. But it turns out that a lot of people weren't that deeply.
I like how this is completely contradictory, by the way, to the messaging that Tucker Carlson engaged in during Trump's campaigns, both in 2016 and in 2020. Because Trump ran hard on the idea of bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States, and now he's here with Tucker Carlson, and he's here with Andrew Yang, and Yang's like, yeah, it's going to happen no matter what, and Tucker's like, yeah, okay. Like, complete admission that that there was basically no way of moving past those economic systems.
Really interested in facts and figures around economics, which was a mild surprise to me. I kind of thought that was what we were supposed to be talking about, but we did animate a number of primary voters in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and around the country. And I'm really grateful to them because I think we've helped our country understand what's happening to us.
There's no national conversation about this still, with respect. I mean, despite, I think, your best efforts, I don't agree with all of your solutions, but I love the fact that you're trying to force that conversation on the country because it's a central one. Why do you think we keep evading that debate?
You're right that we're still not paying enough attention to this.
Yes.
But with COVID, a lot of the arguments I was making essentially materialized in front of our eyes, where you saw Tyson Foods bring in robots in their chicken processing plants. You saw Walmart bring in robot janitors. And this human contact that people were arguing, saying, oh, people love being around other people. Now, obviously, that argument's out the window because businesses will say, not only does it make business sense for us to automate your jobs, but it's also supposedly better for health. And when I was running early on, Tucker, I had a very hard time convincing people that the robots are taking our jobs, that AI is going to eliminate millions of jobs. But now a majority of Americans agree with that argument. So we're still not talking about it enough, but more people are waking up to the fact that it's happening.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can't log in real quick. All right, Yang Gang. Let's see if the audio is just the same.
We're still not talking about it enough, but more people are waking up to the fact that it's happening.
Unbelievable. It's still there. It's actually no way. It's actually part of the original audio for the set. What were they thinking? That is unbelievable. The whole time I was thinking, like, I cannot fathom the degree of incompetence of the person who re-uploaded this. Why were they mowing their high carpets? Like, why were they running a leaf blower in the bathroom? What were they doing? Yeah, I guess the guy shaving his pubes was in Tucker Carlson's studio, The reason why Yang looks so off-put right here is because there's a guy with his leg hiked up in the far end of the table, and he is just blasting his pubes. Yeah, small streamer Tucker Carlson. Guys, have you guys seen clips from, like, any other Tucker Carlson, like, interview? Is this all of them? Do they all have this audio problem? Or does Yang have, like, a little pocket fan in his jacket that's running right next to the lapel, the mic? What's going on? Uh Audio guy took the day off. Yeah. It's the IATSE strike, right? It's he fucking went off and they were like, "Yeah, dude, I don't know." Dude, the industrial fan is like 20 feet away. There's no way it's picking up on this mic. This is so stupid. Thank you, Shu. Well, hopefully they're not all this audio fucked. Well, as long as we're using the same abysmal fucking audio, I'll just stick to YouTube because at least there I don't have to be on Fox News. Thank you, though, Shu.
Get on their feet, maybe move to the next town or start their own business. Get on their feet, maybe move to the next town or start their own business. People are waking up to the fact that it's happening.
So, why are we allowing this? I mean, it sounds like by your telling, and I agree with this, that COVID accelerated trends already in progress.
Yes.
Particularly toward automation.
Yep.
And we all agree that that is going to hurt people. So why do we stand back passively and allow this to progress?
Right now we have a system where big companies are...
Okay. So this is something that Yang can actually answer correctly, okay? The correct answer to this is that automation and globalization of our markets actually increase economic efficiency. These things are done because they produce more money. There's more efficiency every unit of time spent working. Automation, not automation. Thank you. Sorry. There's a better ratio for time spent working to output. This is a good thing. We just need to make sure that the resources which are produced from it are distributed fairly. That's the correct answer.
Are mostly concerned with their bottom line. And so if they can eliminate lots of jobs and save money by adopting automation, right now we're essentially cheerleading them, clapping and saying, great, it's going to be good for your stock price. And a lot of corporate leaders are in these unfortunate positions where they kind of have to dissemble about the impact on their workers. They'll say, don't worry about it. We're going to retrain these workers for something else. And then everyone's like, oh, okay, like, I guess it'll be fine. When really, if you sit with these leaders, they'll be like, yeah, maybe we'll be able to find something new for them to do. Maybe we won't. So when you ask why are we allowing it, right now we have a system of corporate incentives that lead very strongly towards trying to do things as efficiently as possible. And then the other side of the ledger, I'm not sure what the incentive is.
No, Yang is correct. Retraining doesn't really work. Retraining is not a good way of dealing with people whose jobs are displaced because, like, if you're like some 56-year-old dude who's worked in a factory your whole life, you're not going to be retrained into being like a coder or something like that. You know what I mean? Retraining just isn't the best solution here. The best solution is probably that we should have government subsidy programs specifically targeting people in certain industries who get laid off as a product of globalization or technological development. So if you're in an industry that's experiencing a labor contraction because new technology or the implementation of like new processes or new trade routes, then you specifically should be subsidized. The government should pay your salary while you take time to find work elsewhere. Depends on the industry, right? Like, couldn't a factory worker learn how to do installs and solar panels or some shit? Not necessarily, labor work, like tech-adjacent labor, is very specific and can be very difficult to learn a new set of skills, And it really, really depends, Like, the people who install... I don't know about people who install solar panels, but the people who do maintenance on, like, wind factories and turbines, don't they all have, like, engineering degrees? Like, they don't send regular maintenance people out there. They're usually, like, really, really talented or intelligent people. Because you have to be incredibly, like, careful and specific, It's like how you can't be an astronaut without having, like, 20 PhDs. You need to be an expert that allows you to solve pretty much any problem that you encounter up there. I'm not sure how... there are probably some edge cases where retraining is an acceptable solution to some issues, but I don't know how reliable it's going to be, because there's also a difference between retraining and them getting new jobs, right? Like, say 30,000 plant workers get fired and you spend a year retraining them. That doesn't guarantee there are going to be 30,000 jobs open in the field they're being retrained through, there are a lot of difficulties there. At the very least, the government should subsidize um, their salary for some time.
Give us a sense of the scale of this. So the problems that you described, 2017, 18, 19, have gotten much worse, much more profound anyway. If this continues, say, for the next 10 years, how many unemployed, useless, directionless, working-age Americans are we looking at here?
Useless.
It's definitely in the millions and possibly even into the tens of millions. And if you look at the composition of our labor market, most common jobs in the country are retail and sales, truck driver, information processor, food service and food prep. And a lot of these are the jobs that we're already seeing get eliminated. And by the way, now we're going to be investing more and more in trying to make those jobs extraneous. So you're looking at easily millions of jobs, possibly more than 10 million.
How volatile is a country that has 10 million unemployed young men?
It's extraordinarily volatile. And one of the things that I say
Again, this is one of those miracle problems that can only really exist under our current economic system. In any other economic system, yeah, I don't know why he's specifying young men. Women and men are employed at fairly comparable here, wait. Rate of employment, men versus women. I guess it's 60, wait, hold on. 66% of the workforce was male, 54% was female. That doesn't add up to 100%. What? That's more than 100%. Okay, look, whatever. There are plenty of women in the workforce. Anyway, don't ask me, guys. Anyway, there are plenty of women in the workforce, and yeah, this is a pretty weird framing. I guess you could say men are more likely to commit crimes and be assholes. This is just such a capitalism problem, you know? We're literally talking about a system which makes work more efficient. The reason automation is taking place is because it is becoming more efficient to automate menial labor. That's a good thing. When humans labor, ideally, it should be labor which is meaningful, labor which is social, labor which is accommodating, and labor which is creative. That's the ideal for human labor, you know? Now, it's not always going to be like that, but that's the ideal. We should strive for that. We want that. We want meaningful, accommodating, creative, and social. I think those are the big ones. This is an article. This is why the audio is bad. Wait, do they actually explain why the audio is bad in this thing? I feel like you could blow that house down. Huh. Well, whatever.
My last book, The War on Normal People, aptly named, is that if you have a group of people that don't have employment, particularly if they're men, antisocial behaviors surge. You see more gambling, more substance abuse, more crime, more self-destruction.
More mental illness.
More mental illness, for sure.
So we're seeing that now.
Yeah, we're living that very much so.
This is what happens when people who talk about automation are not pro-worker. This is the tech-brained cuck cycle that we are being led into. When your understanding of unemployment and labor, like job shortages, is people are going to be useless, they're going to be like lazy, and they're going to be like mentally ill. Like that's what happens when you're not pro-worker. They're incapable of framing this through a socialist lens. That we're potentially, if handled well, you know, we're on the verge of some very uncomfortable realizations about our economy. The fact that the idea that people need to work to live is not sustainable because there might not be enough work to keep every single American busy for 40 hours a day.
Well, the solution first is to own up to the problem. And this is one of the frustrations I had on the presidential trail, is that if you argue that this case, somehow someone makes it ideological. And again, there's nothing ideological about the fact that my friends are working on technology that's going to be able to do the work of call center workers.
40 hours a week.
There's 1 million call center workers right now. So we have to acknowledge the problem, and then we have to invest in trying to create new touch points for, in particular, millions of men to have other roles in the economy.
Wait, really though, why are we fixating on the men so hard? I know we're in the Carlson studio and everything, but women and men both participate in the workforce. I don't know why we're focusing so hard on that. Because it's truckers? Maybe it'll be like more men than women, but we're still talking millions of women.
economy that are fulfilling, will give them purpose, structure, meaning, and also hopefully drive value. So one example would be, for example, an infrastructure bill. If you could employ hundreds of thousands of people rebuilding our crumbling highways or schools or railways, I mean, that's a good move. And then
that's essentially a new deal. I don't have a problem with that at all. As long as we have a lot of people who are unemployed anyway, and we have a lot of infrastructure issues, I think that's a very serviceable way of, improving the country.
And you should think in those terms over and over again. Because if you look at the numbers, our labor force participation rate, which is the ratio of people that are in the labor market, was at multi-decade lows pre-COVID, has sunk further down, and every 1/10 of a percentage point in the labor force participation rate translates to hundreds of thousands of unemployed people, but unemployed men. And then that results in higher crime, mental illness, substance abuse, depression, and on and on.
Here's what I don't understand. So I know you're not allowed to question immigration in any way, but not all immigration is the same. So you're describing an economy where people who work with their minds have a much brighter future than people who work with their hands. I think we can agree on that. So if you're importing to the tune of over
I'm automation proof, guys. Can't put a robot in my shoes.
$1 million a year, people who, at least this generation of those people, will be working with their hands because their education levels, what the hell are they going to do, and why would you do that at exactly the moment that we're automating everything? I mean, I know it's hard to address this because people inject race into it. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with labor.
What?
So, what's the answer?
What?
There's this whole rung of opportunities in the economy that Americans don't want to do. And those jobs right now are being filled by immigrants. And you can see that up and down the agricultural industry for sure. Where I live in New York City, there are a lot of delivery jobs and chef jobs and a bunch of other jobs that are being filled by immigrants right now.
For sure.
So there's
Hey, do you know one way that you could fix that? You could actually have consistent labor laws that that elevate the working standards in these industries, so that they're not only taken by desperate, undocumented immigrants who will take literally anything they can get to afford food. That would be cool. There are solutions to this which make the world worse, and solutions to this which make the world better.
this whole rung of opportunities. Now, what's the right number? What's the right balance? I think that you'd have to do a lot more work to figure out whether we're getting it right.
I don't hear anybody even thinking about the calculation. I don't hear a single person. I mean, the objections that people have to immigration are mostly cultural. We could argue whether those are legitimate. I have those reservations, I'll be honest. But my main reservations are economic. So I don't hear many attacks on our immigration system from the right from an economic perspective. Like, what are these people going to do? Will this make us richer or poorer? And I don't even hear this conversation taking place at all on the pro-immigration side. So, why?
Well,
That is absolutely not true. Pro-immigration advocates are usually also people advocating for stronger welfare systems. The systems that you would use to address the niche problems produced by immigration, which are otherwise very beneficial to the country, are problems which can be fixed through wealth redistribution. Something Tucker Carlson pretends to be in favor of in concept, but never actually advocates for directly.
Of immigrants myself, and my father got his PhD in physics from Berkeley and generated 69 US patents for GE and IBM.
Yeah.
So there's a class of immigrants that I think are awesome for the country, and hopefully will end up driving a ton of value. And I remember when I was talking about this on the Democratic debate stage, and I said something to that effect, and then someone said, "Hey, Andrew, FYI, your parents aren't the typical immigrants we're talking about." So I think it is a question that we should, again, try and take ideology out of, is that a modern country should have policies on immigration that are trying to enhance our overall well-being. There's a human rights perspective that I certainly appreciate a great deal, because people want better lives, and immigrants do end up adding economic value in most cases after a generation or two. But
no, not after a generation or two. Immediately. They immediately add value. But okay, at least he's acknowledging that, immigrants... okay, hold on.
You have to have practical approaches that try and balance a number of concerns at the same time.
But why wouldn't... So if someone says, Andrew Yang, your parents are not typical immigrants, first of all, who would dare say that to you? But leaving that aside,
Wait, is that even offensive? Yeah, the typical immigrant probably doesn't come in with a high education and get a bajillion patents. Probably? Yeah? Like, I don't know. It's yeah, anti-racist Tucker Carlson. I don't think that's inherently like a racist thing to say. When we talk about immigrant issues in the United States, we're usually talking about like uh, 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 low income immigrants, documented or undocumented, from like Mexico. Let's be real. When we talk about immigration in America, the majority of what people immediately think of involves Mexico because we have a huge border with them and we get a lot of immigrants from there. That's like the main thing that people think of. We get immigrants from all over the world, but they're a significant portion of it. And they're also the most controversial, bastion of immigrants that we get.
Why wouldn't we say, okay, if Andrew Yang's parents added 69 new patents, that's a good thing.
Sure.
Well, so why wouldn't we try and figure out how to get more Andrew Yang's parents to come here?
I think we should.
Wait, we do. Don't we have the visas? But isn't Tucker Carlson against those visas? The H-1B? Usually conservatives are the ones arguing against those visas. Unfortunately, they're very limited. Yeah, I want more of them. I think we should have more of those. Green cards exist too, but Tucker Carlson is against them? Yeah.
One of the things that the U.S. has benefited from for generations is that we were a beacon for the rest of the country, and we absorbed a lot of the human and intellectual capital that ended up driving a ton of value, not just in terms of patents, but like in every field you can think of. And we're losing that, really. There are a lot of people around the world now that don't think that the U.S. is the land of opportunity.
Even as our immigration levels rise to I think this year will be the highest level ever. So even as we get more immigration, we're less...
Yeah. Tucker Carlson has literally come out against H-1B visas in the past. What a fucking snake, dude. Maybe we should find ways to make sure more high-value, highly educated immigrants come in. Except for when, yeah. Except for when I am talking about them, in any other context. I fucking hate this guy.
Thoughtful about how we sort that and less interested in its effect on us, which is to say the people whose country it is.
Oh, here's a direct transcript of him complaining about them. Oh, these are about H-2B visas, not H-1B visas. But yeah, like Tucker Carlson is holistically against immigration, He'll pretend that he's not, but like, oh no, here we go. Oh, it's H-1, sorry. DHS notified 85,000 new winners of the H-1B visas lottery. Today, those winners can begin filling out their full visa applications for jobs that'll begin in October, just when unemployment could be at its peak and coronavirus could be making a comeback as the weather cools. H-1B visas are supposed to allow companies to hire foreigners with skills that simply don't exist in the American workplace. It's a fraud, of course. In practice, the visas are used to import tens of thousands of tech workers from India, so Silicon Valley can profit from a cheaper workforce. So again, this is not true. If you talk to business owners in Silicon Valley, they prefer hiring domestically, okay? It's much easier than bringing someone in from the other fucking side of the planet, all right? The reason they bring people in from India is because India has literally millions of highly educated tech workers waiting for the opportunity to work here in America. Now, there are problems with the H-1B system, but this is currently the best system we have for bringing in extremely talented and educated immigrants, and it's something Tucker Carlson opposes.
It is. Like, what is that?
And that's something I'd love to help turn around, where I do know people who in past years 100% would be trying to start their companies here in the US. And by the way, that would end up creating jobs and value and wealth and the rest of it, who are instead starting them in other parts of the world.
Why?
Because they think they have a better combination of environment, competitiveness, support, access to talent. Maybe they themselves are not American, and it's hard for them to come here and set up shop here. I mean, there are a lot of reasons. But I have.
But I mean, this is important. This is an important question. I mean, this is your world. You know, people who are literally going to Singapore or whatever rather than here. Where are they going, by the way?
Well, they're staying in China. They're staying in India. They're heading to Singapore and other parts of the world, Indonesia even. Like that, there are people who are making...
I feel like we could probably supplement this discussion with by pointing out that if we made college more accessible for students and if we increase the quality of our national education, we would not need to rely so much on foreign laborers for like high-tech jobs. Like that might also be something worth considering. That like countries like China take their education incredibly seriously, and for that reason they do produce like a significant number of highly educated people, so much so that they have an excess that flow into other countries.
Interesting choices.
If someone has decided, someone with options, I'd rather go to Indonesia than San Francisco. You have to ask, what is it about San Francisco that they're avoiding, intentionally avoiding?
Wait, what?
I'd rather go to Indonesia than San Francisco. You have to ask, what is it about San Francisco that they're avoiding, intentionally avoiding?
The H-1B is a lottery. When they win the lottery, they come over. There are literally millions of people in India who want to come to the United States who don't. Other countries are usually a second choice. Is he suggesting there are people who win the H-1B lottery and they're like, no, actually, I want to go to Indonesia? What the fuck is he talking about? Maybe some people have? I think the fact that we fill these lotteries every single year indicates that there are plenty of people who want to come here to the United States. If we doubled the size of this lottery, then double the number of people would come in. There far more people want to come into the United States than are coming into the United States. That is for sure. That's not what he's talking about. Is he talking about starting businesses?
You have to rather go. If someone has decided, someone with options, I'd rather go to Indonesia.
Singapore and other parts of the world, Indonesia even, like that, there are people who are making interesting choices.
If someone has decided, someone with options, I'd rather go to Indonesia than San Francisco. You have to ask, what is it about San Francisco that they're avoiding intentionally?
Wait, is that how that works? When you go to a place, that means you're avoiding every single other place you're not going to? Like, why aren't they avoiding, like, Hamburg or Austin by going to Indonesia? Why are we singling out San Francisco? There are developing tech centers all over the world. This is so... this is so dumb. What are we talking about right now? Is it like when people start businesses in any place, anywhere in the world that isn't San Francisco, is it because they're avoiding San Francisco? Yeah, they're avoiding moon development. Why are they so afraid of the moon? Yeah, I know he's implying that San Francisco is woke, so they don't want to go there, but...
Intentionally avoiding. What is it?
Right now...
Notice how... I can't tell if Yang realizes this is a stupid leading question, or if he knows what Tucker's saying, agrees with it, and is trying to be, like, diplomatic.
Be honest, I won't tell anybody. I'm just interested.
Well, I mean, the people I'm thinking of, for them it is, hey, can I actually... get a visa? Can I get a visa for all the people that I want to get a visa for? Can I recruit talent who's going to want to stay there at a rate that makes sense for my business? Am I going to be able to grow the business in a cost-efficient way? San Francisco, I think what you were driving at was a slightly different issue, which is what's going on in San Francisco, where I was this past week. And you know, there are issues around livability in San Francisco.
Sure, and I mean, it could be Marin County, it could be the South Bay. I mean, anywhere in the Bay Area, but that's our technology capital. So, I mean, we have a much larger population than Indonesia. It's a much freer country. The standards of living in the United States are much higher still than Indonesia, much, much higher. So you just have to, and with all these people, you would think that we would have the human capital, as you put it, to staff a startup. But they're deciding they'd rather be in Indonesia. So, like, what?
There are so many layers on how this isn't how this works. Literally, what the fuck are we talking about? First of all, San Francisco is not the only hub of tech development in America. Another big one is Austin, Texas. You know? They're starting up all over the country right now. It's not just San Francisco. I know he wants to go the whole, like, San Francisco woke unlivable shit. But yeah, New York as well, which, you know, is one of the biggest countries in the world. Seattle, all over the place, you know? He's trying to frame this narrative of, like, people would rather go to, like, the third world than spend time in San Francisco, which is such a stupid and forced narrative. Sorry, not country. One of the biggest cities in the country. That's what I tried to say. Actually, no, New York City is the biggest city in the country, isn't it? One of the biggest cities in the world, then. For startups, San Francisco is still the #1 spot to go. Yeah, we're talking about, like, edge cases here. San Francisco is still, like, the big tech startup area. We're talking about, like we're taking a minority of a huge group with a lot of varying interests and motivations and investments. And we're talking about the portion of them, of that minority, that decide to start up in Indonesia, then assuming the only reason they would do so is because they're avoiding San Francisco. And then we're inferring the reason they're doing this is because they don't like San Francisco. And the reason they don't like San Francisco is because it's woke or it has homeless people or something. This is so dumb. This is so stupid. Cramming in the talking points wherever you can find them.
Do we need to fix to change that?
We need to make it easier for folks who want to start businesses to come here. First, it starts with going to school here, because a lot of these people used to come here for their degrees and get graduate degrees. And one thing I think is a no-brainer is that if you come to study here and get a degree or an advanced degree in particular, we should be stapling a green card to your diploma. Right now, there are far too many people who come to this country, get an advanced degree like my parents did, but don't stay here like my parents did. They go home. And then 5 years later, we're competing with the company that they started. That doesn't make any sense to me. They should be starting the company right here in the US.
Wait a second. So
there is some truth to this. I do think that if you're going to benefit from American education, we should prioritize people who are going to work in America or start businesses in America. I think that seems fair to me. You know, like you're, however you want to do that, whether you want to have like subsidies or tax breaks for like businesses started up in America after you've benefited from education or stuff like that, or like preferential school allotment for non-immigrants. I'm okay with stuff like that. Or from people who don't like live here, you know what I mean? Not from non-immigrants. Like if you come to the country exclusively just to get like a UCLA education, I think it's okay for you to be like prioritized behind people who were born here or people who were raised here. I think that's okay.
But if there's like, I mean, you're saying that we don't have a very deep labor pool for sophisticated technology companies. I mean, we have a ton of people. We've issued more green cards than we've ever issued ever. And yet we don't have enough people to help grow a company. Like what about our systems is broken?
We're not producing as many STEM grads and engineers as certain other countries. And then the engineers we do produce typically have higher wage requirements and other things. And so even if you were to start a successful tech company in San Francisco in the Bay Area, your preference probably would be to also start a tech development wing or outpost in another part of the world so you can access that talent. But that's a preferable arrangement to that company being based someplace else in the first place.
Yeah. So you've just described something pretty scary. So you're saying the manual jobs are going away because of automation.
Yes.
And now the knowledge-based jobs are going away because of labor costs.
There's some truth to that.
Now, what could we do to address that, do you think? What do you think we could do to maybe help that process out a little bit, to avoid brain drain out of the United States? I really wonder, you know? Everyone in chat, put your thinking caps on.
For sure, where we don't have the full suite of talent to help a lot of companies reach scale. And so a lot of companies, as soon as they do have that aspiration, do want to set up tech outposts in China, in India, and other parts of the world to access that engineering talent. That's the truth.
Does that worry you?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's better than that company being headquartered in China and India in the first place. But we have a lot of problems, Tucker, and I think you and I agree on the general picture that we're automating away millions of jobs, and we're not being terribly honest about it. And a lot of Americans are looking up saying, like, what the heck happened to my middle class livelihood or the town that I grew up in, I want my kids to grow up in. All of a sudden, my kids are looking up and saying the population is shrinking and the opportunities aren't here. I mean, that's the picture. And that picture is manifesting in different ways in different parts of the economy. It's not necessarily the case that things are great for a certain class of workers that you might imagine in terms of white collar, college-educated workers. That, I mean, they have their own set of issues. They're going to be much better off, though, than the manual workers whose jobs we're decimating.
And it's important to remember that right now there is more wealth in this country than there was back when all these guys had their right out of high school factory jobs. Nobody talks about it in those terms, because when you talk about it that way, it becomes abundantly clear that what we're really dealing with was a problem with distribution. Unions aren't as strong as they used to be, and the wealthy are obscenely wealthy compared to how they used to be. It's become more concentrated. The wealth is there. It exists.
You became really famous for a bunch of reasons during the presidential campaign, but mostly for UBI.
They've said that forever. They don't fix it. Talking about the consolidation of wealth means nothing unless you have meaningful solutions to it. You bring it up like, the wealthy are wealthy. Okay, what the fuck are you going to do about it? Now, Yang has talked about a UBI, but as we know, this is more of a general placating force to automation and, unemployment than it is some meaningful way of uplifting the working class. With regards to Tucker Carlson, he doesn't give a single fuck about poor people, and I'm not going to pretend that he does. What we need to talk about fundamentally is undoing the economic systems that have led to this hyper concentration of wealth. And they don't talk about that. They talk about these problems. I mean, think about it this way, okay? We've talked about a lot of stuff so far. What solutions have we talked about? Immigration. That's the only thing we've really touched on, isn't it? We're 18 minutes in, and immigration is the thing that we focused on. Even though that is at most it's a red herring. It's a tangential, tiny little slice of the pie compared to the broader issues concerning wealth redistribution. But that's what they're focusing on, because of course that's what Tucker Carlson wants to focus on.
Universal basic.
UBI is absolutely targeting and uplifting poor people. A good UBI would. The fact that Yang's initial UBI proposal had discounts if you were already benefiting from welfare programs was so disgusting to me. The idea that he would talk about a UBI, but it's like, if you already get more than $1,000 per month from social services, then you don't actually get anything from the UBI. Like, yeah, that's like so insane to me. The idea that that's like the direction. He later updated that UBI proposal. I know the one dude, aka the Yang Gang advocate in chat, but he still proposed it to begin with. Gale, if they can be a good advocate for good positions, I'm all in favor of it. It's just Yang's, we're only a third of the way through the interview, so we'll see how things go.
Basic income, the idea that the government is going to meet some threshold for you. Just give us, and I know this is well practiced because you've talked about this a ton. We have never talked about this. Give us your 2-minute pitch for why UBI is a good idea.
Universal basic income is a policy where everyone in a society, let's say the US of A, gets a certain amount of money to meet your basic needs, no questions asked. And this is not an Andrew Yang idea. This is a Thomas Paine idea, a Milton Friedman idea, a Martin Luther King idea. I ran on a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for every American when you turn 18, which I thought would be a foundation and help people make more effective transitions. But if we are going through this historic transformation, which we are, in my opinion, then we need to try and give people the ability to manage that transition and also participate in the value that's being generated. Because today you have trillion-dollar companies like Amazon paying zero in taxes, and then we're all looking around wondering what the heck is going on. We should make as many Americans as possible participants and shareholders in the value that's being generated in parts of the economy.
A couple of things really quick. Your point about Amazon not paying taxes is, I think, literally infuriating to people certainly it is to me when I hear that. Why not just fix that problem first?
Oh, we should. I was beating the drum about that on the presidential trail, and I remember you were right there with me being like, this is crazy.
Amazon pays no taxes?
Yeah, that Amazon pays no taxes. You'd be like, that makes zero sense.
Because the highest market cap in the world and it pays no taxes?
Yeah, it's infuriating. I agree.
So, and we'll get to UBI in just a second, but
keep in mind, this is also a little bit of a red herring. If you want to talk about wealth inequality, you need to talk about capital gains tax and income tax. Corporate taxes are just not that relevant. As far as I can tell, as far as the research shows, corporate taxes are just not the best way of targeting wealth redistribution. You want to target income tax and capital gains tax. And property taxes to a lesser extent. True, though you need to be careful fiddling with those numbers because, you could displace a lot of people if you adjust property taxes by too much. Whereas if you're adjusting like the upper ring of income tax, you're not going to be putting anyone out of house and home unless they have an obscenely large home, that is for sure.
So when you said that, everyone goes, yeah, that's exactly right. But why? I mean, that's fixable. We have a Congress which sets our tax policy. What kind of reaction did you get, without naming names, privately to that? Like, why isn't there a groundswell of support among political leaders to just, I don't know, make Amazon pay taxes? Why is that hard?
Well, it's a sign of the dysfunction in DC.
Well, that's an excellent question. Except instead of political leaders, what if we attacked the actual political party most opposed to it? Guys, which was the last major House bill trying to address corporate tax rates? Oh, that's right. I completely forgot. Trump did cut the corporate tax rate. And Democrats have been trying to roll up. Oh, and that's right, Republicans voted for this. That's totally right. I fucking hate Tucker Carlson so goddamn much, dude. Holy shit. Oh, these Weasley And by the way, Yang should be calling this out, okay? Yang should be calling this out, like, right here. The fact that he's not, and I know he's not going to, the fact that he's not is lame-o shit, okay? To have Tucker Carlson, one of the most partisan pundits on air right now, go like, oh, what's keeping our leaders from... As if it isn't very, very, very explicitly the Republicans who are doing this.
Right now, where you have very, very obvious glaring problems, like the fact that Amazon pays no taxes, and then they can't come up with a solution. I proposed a solution that some people might have issues with, which is a value-added tax, because I thought that Amazon could not game its way out of that. It's essentially like a tax at the point of sale.
This is literally playing into the far-right narrative right now. What he's actually doing is playing cover for the people who allow corporations to pay $0 on their corporate tax. By playing cover for the people, for the party actually doing it, that's exactly what he's doing.
But in my mind, it's just a sign of how broken Congress is, Tucker.
I mean, what do I know? I'm not an expert in tax policy, but it might just be easier to pass an Amazon tax.
Sure.
Where Amazon pays 15% of its net in taxes. Like, why not?
That would
pay 50.
I don't know if you
that would be pretty popular. It's true. It might have a better shot at passing if it was just called the Amazon tax.
Yeah. Okay, so to UBI.
Oh, yeah. By the way, guys, remember Tucker Carlson, super duper pro making the rich pay their fair share? The dude is anti-tax hikes. Please keep that in mind. Tucker Carlson is, every single time Democrats try to raise taxes, Tucker Carlson is there to defend the Republicans. And then, hypocritically, every single time he gets an opportunity to rail against the wealthy coastal elites, he will pretend that he's in favor of taxing the wealthy.
Especially when you throw in the disparity between how Amazon is treated by our tax code and how your average wage earner is treated, you definitely get my sympathy. Here's the problem that
I think the reason why corporate taxes aren't a very good vector for attacking corporations is because companies that expand rapidly get to list their losses every single year, and if they can do that and then put back their profits like into the next like cycle, they can essentially like it's like the losses that they accrue through expansion they can use to continue cycling forward and deducting the amount they have to pay taxes on. So companies like Amazon that are constantly expanding have the option to like, yeah, the losses carry forward forever, basically. Now, there's probably some crazy complex shit there that I'm not losses, they're expenditures, the stuff they spend money on. Yeah. There's some really complicated stuff on the back end that I'm not super familiar with. So it's probably more complicated than that, but I think that's like the basic way of handling it.
I have with UBI, I'd just be interested in your response to it. As a human matter, when you give people something they didn't earn, it's not good for them. And all of us have experienced this in one way or another.
Pro-worker Tucker Carlson arguing against basic welfare by saying that if you haven't earned it, it's not.
Sound like a parent, Tucker. No, I'm kidding.
I'm a parent of four. And I'm also someone who grew up around, people with...
Also, this guy's heir to the Swanson fortune, right? Multimillionaire from birth. Yeah.
Inherited money. And I can't think of a single instance where it was good for them, not one. So that's not, of course, on the other side, you don't think of UBI as like some trust fund. It's a small amount. It's $12 grand a year.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the principle remains, you went to Exeter, Phillips Exeter, in Exeter, New Hampshire, which is a famous boarding school and rich person in the world and a great school. Congrats. But you've been around inherited money people, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Why is that
He's
not
currently
a
around
problem?
inherited money people.
Well, to me, the problem is at the other end, Tucker, where if someone's trying to get ahead and we've blasted away their factory or automated away their job, then at this point they're sinking into the dirt with the town in many ways because we haven't left them much of a recourse. And in that circumstance, to me, $1,000 a month as a transition fund for them to get on their feet, maybe move to the next town or start their own business or pool together the funds with other people and work on something they've always wanted to work on. To me, that's something that our government can do that would be effective and would make sense. And to your point about the fact that, look, $1,000 a month isn't going to cause anyone to run out and buy a Porsche or anything like that.
No,
like,
not going to marry your secretary on $1,000 a month.
That it's foundational and also would make people feel like they had actual value in terms of our citizenship, really. Like right now we're telling people they can vote. And then people are looking up being like, huh.
VOWSH, you were 100% right earlier. The better taxation method is on personal income and capital gains tax. Corporate taxes are really only useful to, this is smart, to incentivize reinvestment in order to reduce tax burden. For example, salaries are tax deductible for corporations. Okay, so corporate taxes are good to incentivize that the money gets reinvested or spent on salaries rather than it simply being like just hoarded in the Amazon money vaults. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. So you don't want a super high corporate tax rate because all you're really doing is putting more pressure on that incentivization. You really just want like a basic level just to make sure that things are moving forward enough to incentivize like spending appropriately on investment and salaries. Okay, that makes sense. I'm sure there's a lot of really like complicated nuanced shit behind all of that, but yeah, okay, I think that makes sense. And as long as the corporations aren't hoarding wealth, like literally in a bank account, anything that doesn't get spent on reinvestment, it goes towards like stock options and salaries, and that's when you really get them by taxing their income and their capital gains.
Like for some reason, my vote doesn't seem to be like doesn't seem to have the same umph that maybe was brought up to think that it had. When I ran companies, and I've run several companies, people can always tell whether you're investing in them. And so I would love to be able to look every American child in the eye and say, your country loves you, values you, and we will invest in you in your future.
How about improving the schools, which suck? I mean, they're embarrassing. Schools are terrible. Like, they're a joke, and everyone knows that. That's why everyone in my world sends his kids to...
I do appreciate Tucker's forwardness, by the way. They suck.
To private school. I think you actually send your kids to public school. But the point is, congratulations. But
for the summer.
Most people I know send their kids to private school, especially if they live in cities, because the schools are just so bad, and we've really given up. Like, why wouldn't that be a good way to elevate the people who need it?
No, I love the idea of trying to make our schools better. Part of this, Tucker, is I'm an operator, an entrepreneur, and I have higher confidence in our ability to send people $1,000 a month and have them be able to do something positive and useful with it than for me to stand up and say, I'm going to make everyone's schools better. Because that's like a politician thing that politicians have been saying for years and years. And if I said it, I could believe it, I could want it. But
what a smooth-brained fucking take, dude. Oh yeah, talking about improving our basic infrastructure would be too establishment for me, so I'm not gonna. What the fuck is wrong with... What? I'm sorry it's too mainstream for you, dude, to talk about improving our schools. I'm sorry if it cramps your style. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, too cool for school, I guess. What? Just move on.
I might not be able to deliver on that in a time frame where I'm going to be able to help you and your family.
No, it's a complicated. I think that's an entirely fair point.
But I would be totally for.
Yeah, it's either he's saying it's too mainstream for him, or he's essentially admitting that he can't govern, that he doesn't have confidence in his ability to improve the country outside of just like tossing people $1,000 a month and just,
Or trying to invest in our education in a way that would actually work and be impactful. And we've been grasping at that. One of the studies I saw that really had an impact on me was that, and I have two kids, 9 and 6, one of them is special needs, that 2/3 of our kids' educational outcomes occur outside of school.
Right.
And that's number of words spoken to them when they're a baby, stress levels in the household, income of the neighborhood. And so these are variables that are outside of the school, and the teachers know it. If you go to any teacher and say, hey, what if I were to tell you that you can control approximately 1/3 of your students' educational outcomes? They would be like, yeah, I think that's right, because they've taught dozens or hundreds of kids, and they know that a lot of the stuff's happening outside of the school. So if you're a society...
So maybe we could subsidize, like, daycare, you know? Kind of like with a $3.5 trillion Build Back Better Biden bedabbing plan might be able to do a little bit. Maybe we can make that just an essential part of the human experience here in America.
And you wanted to help people learn, would you focus on the 1/3 of the 2/3, particularly when you think you could make a big difference of the 2/3, and the 1/3 you've been trying to make a difference for years, somewhat unsuccessfully? Not that I want to give up on it. I mean, we still need to try.
No, I think it's a fair point. I mean, if the moms in a neighborhood want a good school, you'll have a good school. And if the families are disorganized and people are totally distracted by just keeping everything together, you've got bad schools.
What? If the moms want, I don't think moms control the school. I think there's a school board that gets funding from property taxes. I don't. What does he mean? Okay, I might be reaching a little bit here. So, okay, there's a very obvious reading and a less obvious reading. The obvious reading, and this is yet another conservative way of blaming systemic problems on individual failures. Why are, like, POC neighborhoods full of bad schools? Well, it's because their parents don't care enough. Like, it's very easy to take this perspective and immediately transcribe it onto a lot of really old values. Bootstrappy type stuff, which is, it's funny because, like, Tucker Carlson's supposed to be like the alternative to that with his populism, but no, apparently it's moms not caring enough that makes, like, schools in the inner city where they have no fucking income and a fuck ton of systemic issues that the city government's not dealing with. It makes it their fault. But additionally, I think that there's also, like, the family element here. There's, like, this very weird, a lot of early not early, I guess, but a lot of white supremacist mythology involves understanding the family as this existential bedrock of Western civilization, more so than what conservatives traditionally do. It's not just like a strong family means a strong country. It's that a strong family is like the ideological root from which all other goodness derives. It's actually like a moral center of the universe, And that, to me, the idea that, like, good moms equals good schools is so ridiculous that I feel like it could only stem from some borderline mythological understanding of what a good family can do for the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, it's not just strong families mean strong countries. It's a strong family is the country.
I mean, that's true.
Well, so much of it is what goes on at home with the family. And it's one reason I'm so grateful to my wife, Evelyn, who's been at home with our boys over this last number of years.
I'm grateful to your wife, too.
You could have the best school in the world, but if the kids aren't getting what they need at home, you're not going to have the best outcome.
So you just ran for mayor of New York. You've got to still be in shock.
That was a good transition right there.
Shock from that. It's the biggest city in the country. It's one of the most ferocious political races that we have. Under the best circumstances, the city's kind of right on the edge of insanity. I mean that with love, as someone who loves New York on some level. But, like, what was that like?
It was a lot, for sure, Tucker. I mean, the city's in tough shape and has been for a number...
Sorry, did I miss something there?
New York on some level. On the edge of insanity. I mean that with love, as someone who loves New York on some level. But, like, what was that like?
Okay, sorry, I think that's fine. All large cities are kind of insane.
It was a lot, for sure, Tucker. I mean, the city's in tough shape and has been for a number of months. The race was very intense. We put out what I thought was a positive, practical message, got over 115,000 first place votes, got more individual donors than any mayoral candidate in the history of New York City, which I'm very proud of. came up short, and still just hoping that the city gets back on its feet as quickly as possible.
What do you think of ranked choice voting?
It's weird to me that Yang would try to run for mayor when the only thing he gives a fuck about is his UBI, and you can't really do a UBI for New York, you know? Like, a UBI can't really work unless it's a national policy. I mean, maybe you can have like a cut down like welfare program specific to the city, but universal basic income is universal. So, given the fact that he doesn't seem interested in improving our schools, it's just Alaska. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Alaska has it. But Alaska has it for a reason, doesn't it? Alaska has it because it has a lot of money running through the state because of all the oil, but it doesn't have a lot of people. Also, I don't think they make that much. Hold on. Alaska state payments. Yeah, $1,600 annually per resident, and that's with a ridiculous ratio of oil money per person, you know? Yeah, 1,600 annually is nothing in New York. That's 1 month of rent in an apartment that you split with 16 other like, you know, drama students. It's that's not very much. But given the fact that Yang doesn't seem to have any interest in governing outside of his one pet policy, I just like what would he have even done? In a way, I kind of wish he won just because I want to see what the fuck he would have even done. You know what I think he would have done? I unironically think he would have gone full authoritarian. I feel like he would have mishandled the city budget. I think he would have unemployment would have risen, and I think that there would have been protests, and he would have went with the police way harder than it seems like he would have. Because he seems to me like the kind of guy who thinks he's smarter than governments, and the kind of guy who'd get very frustrated when his vision of the world doesn't work out the way he expects it to. Maybe that's very uncharitable of me, but like that's just the feeling that I get. His website has 200 different policies, dude. You can copy paste policy. Okay, I hate the Yangaggers in chat. I don't give a fuck what your website talks about. I care what he cares about as a person, okay? Any politician can copy paste talking points from one like website to another, okay? What matters is who, like the vibes that he gives with regards to his governance and what he cares enough about to talk about. Yang doesn't talk about policy very much. He talks about his UBI, which is it's a policy, but that's the one that he talks about. And he also kind of talks down on traditional governance. Maybe he has a bunch of progressive policies listed on his website, but how does that actually translate into the enthusiasm and the vigor and the energy of actually applying them as a politician? To me, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I hope the Yangaggers in chat can understand my hesitance here. Would you vote for a guy who's basically admitted that he doesn't like have much faith in governance? Like, that's a little bit odd. Yang also came out against teachers' unions who were protesting about a lack of COVID protections in schools. He's done some weird stuff, man. I get it, just stop misrepresenting him. I'm literally not misrepresenting him, okay? I've said he doesn't talk about policy and he doesn't care about governance, and both of those things are true.
I am a huge ranked choice voting fan, and I will say to anyone listening to this, you're like, ranked choice, what?
Wait, says the anarchist? Wait, Will from PA. Dog, you're a tier 4. You're not doing this to me, right? You got to be kidding me, Will. You're not doing this to me, right? Not with that yellow name. Don't do it to me. Please. My tier 4. Please. No. All right, just watch the damn thing.
95% of New Yorkers found it easy to use, and 77% want to do it again. So if you get 4 out of 5 New Yorkers want to do something again, it's pretty good. But it makes your vote more powerful because you can vote for more than one candidate in order of preference. And this way, no one can tell you, oh, you're going to waste your vote, because you're like, well, I'll vote for whoever I want. And if my first choice candidate doesn't make it to the top, then my vote will flow to the second choice candidate, or maybe even third.
New
York City had a very tough time counting those ballots, I noticed.
Yeah, there's a process, and then there's the competence of the Board of Elections of New York City. Like very excited about the merits and potential for ranked choice voting. Would not vouch for the Board of Elections.
I don't know anything about the Board of Elections, so I don't know if I should be concerned over this.
The moment, for those of us who don't live in New York, that kind of filtered out of the city to the rest of the country with you, came when you noted that New York has an actual homeless problem. It's completely real. And here's what you said. This was your controversial statement.
Let's go.
I had that experience countless times on the trail, Don, where I would say, hey, I'm running for president to a truck driver, retail worker, waitress in a diner. And they would say, what party? And I'd say Democrat. And they would flinch. Like I'd said something really negative, or I just had turned another color or something like that. And there's something deeply wrong when working class Americans have that response to a major party that theoretically is supposed to be fighting for them. So you have to ask yourself, what has the Democratic Party been standing for in their minds? And in their minds, the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has taken on this role of the coastal urban elites who are more concerned about policing various cultural issues than improving their way of life.
Yep. Yeah, okay. This is literally, okay, this is objectively indefensible. If there are any Yang gangers in chat who want to defend these comments at all, first of all, Republicans, wealth means more likely to vote Republican, okay? Simple as that. So the idea that the Democrats are like the party of the elite is just not true. That's why Republicans pass tax cuts and Democrats try to get it hiked back up. That's why Republicans are constantly going to anti-union and anti-worker policies. Democrats try to fight against that. Not as much as I would like to, but still. And then he's making the argument that Democrats try to police cultural issues. I'm sorry, what the fuck was the Trump administration? Muslim ban? No trans people in the military? Trans bathroom bills? They're the ones who try to police cultural issues. Donald Trump tried to bring in the fucking military to break down BLM. He's talking about how they're perceived. Holy shit. Did I mishear?
That how Americans have that response to a major party that theoretically is supposed to be fighting for them. So you have to ask yourself, what has the Democratic Party been standing for in their minds? And in their minds, the Democratic Party, unfortunately,
oh my God, I'm so fucking bad, dude.
unfortunately, has taken on this role of the coastal urban elites who are more concerned about policing various cultural issues than improving their way of life. That has been declining for years.
Okay, so sometimes, as
wait, what was the end of that quote? Yang gangers seething right now. What was the end of that quote?
And the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has taken on this role of the coastal urban elites who are more concerned about policing various cultural issues than improving their way of life. That has been declining for years.
I want to hear the end of it. What the perception of Republicans is. Does anyone have the full quote there? If anyone has the timestamp to the full quote, I want to see.
Okay, so sometimes, as the host, you want to ask a question, but the control room in New York decides, no, we're going to go in another direction. This is an illustration of how I'm just a puppet of my producers at Fox News HQ. So they ran another soundbite that's you from November of 2020, making the point that the Democratic Party was the party of the working man, a phrase that's not even allowed anymore.
I think I found it. The phrase working man isn't allowed anymore? What the fuck does that mean?
Democrats don't do a good job of speaking to
situation. This to me is a fundamental problem for the Democrats. So you have to ask yourself, what has the Democratic Party been standing for in their minds? And in their minds, the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has taken on this role of the coastal urban elites who are more concerned about policing various cultural issues than improving their way of life. That has been declining for years. And so if you're in that situation, this to me is a fundamental problem for the Democratic Party, because if they don't figure this out, then this polarization and division will get worse, not better.
Is that real or messaging or both?
It's real. I mean, Debbie just said they lost a plant that had 1,500 workers. And so if you're a laid off worker from that plant and you look up and say, what is the Democratic Party doing for me? It's unclear. And we can talk about a unifying message from Joe Biden. He's a naturally very unifying figure. But then there's the reality on the ground where their way of life has been disintegrating for years. And if we don't address that, then you're going to see a continued acceleration toward the institutional mistrust.
Dude, it seems like he's talking about the optics of it, but it also sounds like he's talking about how it actually is. God, he's such a fucking poor communicator sometimes. Holy shit. He's like, oh, there's this perception, and then he's asked, like, is it real? And then, like, yeah, it's real. Bernie and million leftists have said the exact same shit. The idea that the Democrats are like the coastal party of the wealthy elite who police cultural issues rather than like actually try to improve people's lives is objectively not true if framed in contrast to the Republican Party. If it was just the Democrat Party on its own, then yeah, sure. But we're talking about like the relationship between how Republicans and Democrats are perceived, you know? It's one of those, like, you have to make sure that your correct criticisms are framed contextually, you know what I mean? Like, it's like the Jimmy Dore thing. You know how Jimmy Dore talks nonstop about how bad Biden is? Like, okay, whatever. But then he never talks shit about how Republicans, or how bad Republicans are. The implication is that one is better than the other. You know what I mean? By only centering criticisms of one group. God, it's really fucking hard to tell how much of this he's talking, like, optics-wise, and how much of this is talking, like, the actual, like, problem, you know? Also, when we're talking about, like, factory workers who've been laid off, the Democrats are trying to help them out more than the fucking Republicans are. He's talking optics, VOWSH. I mean, he's asked, is this real or perceived? Like, he's asked right here, you know?
Trust.
Both.
It's real. I mean, Debbie not better.
Is that real or messaging or both?
It's real. I mean, Debbie.
I don't know. It's fucking vague, dude. I have no fucking idea. Whatever. I don't know. Move on.
And now it's something very, very different. So you said that, which is a completely fair thing to say. That trend that you described seems to have accelerated.
Yeah, he could be saying that it's the perception is real, or he could be saying that the problem that they're perceiving is real, or he could have said that the perceptions. It's like yeah, God, whatever. Just yeah.
To me, it seems less the party of working people than it ever has been.
I was taken aback by just how
it's doublespeak and it's on purpose. I mean, it does not, like, the fact that Andrew Yang has taken absolutely no shots at the Republicans and constantly, like, signal boost this not left, not right, but forward messaging is not lost on me. We're talking about a person who already both sides like fucking crazy. I don't think it's necessarily unfair of me to read more negatively into his statements when he's already, like, the centrist candidate.
negative a reaction the Democratic Party got among working class people that, again, it's supposed to be fighting for. And I think this is a fundamental problem that I've been essentially begging the Democratic Party to try and get its arms around or make progress on.
Wait, he wants to pull together. Wait, Sam Anthony, who are you? How do you have a tier 2 and you're talking, pull it together? What are you talking about? This not left, not right, but forward shit is politically illiterate. How are you here with a tier 2 sub? And you're unironically, like, both sidesing for me. They got gifted, I saw it. Sam Anthony, wearing the sheep in wolf's clothing. Hello. You don't do this to me. You can't do this to me, Sam Anthony. Please. Come on. We have to move left. There are multiple independents that have been pulled left. I used to live with conservatives. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about whether or not this not left, not right, but forward shit is, like, politically meaningful or helpful. I don't know. We're getting stun locked. Get me out of here. Get me out of here.
I spent months in Iowa and Ohio to a lesser extent, and these are states where Democrats were very competitive recently.
Oh yeah.
And now they are much, much less competitive. And it's in large part because of what I described in that clip, where people don't associate the Democratic Party with real economic solutions that are going to make your life better. It's more.
Please tell me whether you think this is a real problem with the Democratic Party relative to Republicans, or if you're just going to only talk about perception. Please, God.
Around various cultural issues that aren't as core to people's way of life, in my opinion.
So I'm 52, so I've seen all of this change, and I've never been a Democrat, and I've always criticized them, probably in some ways unfairly looking back on it.
Oh.
My views have changed dramatically. But when I think of the Democratic Party in the fall of 2021, I think of a party that is run by and for a small group of affluent.
Okay, thank God. Finally, Tucker Carlson is explicitly saying, in spite of him, of course, being a small group of affluent, hyper-wealthy people, supporting a small group of hyper-wealthy, affluent people, now Yang will have to directly address whether or not he believes the Democrats are that thing.
Unmarried, childless, white liberals in the city who don't have economic concerns, so they don't talk about economics, who are...
There's a $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill right now, literally as this conversation is taking place. A massive infrastructure and welfare bill directly designed to address the economic concerns of the working class, in part, right now, sitting there currently while this conversation took place.
Totally narcissistic, who only want to talk about themselves, i.e. their identities and whatever, sexual interest they have.
What
like
the
completely
fuck? Okay, this is a little weird.
disconnected from the concerns of anybody, and it's this group, young,
When has Biden
affluent,
talked about
white
anything?
liberals in Williamsburg? That's my mental picture. There's no group I personally dislike more, I'll just be honest with you. But it does seem like their concerns have a disproportionate effect on the policies of the party.
It's one reason I enjoyed spending time in Iowa and Ohio and,
he's
want
not
to
gonna
orient
push
the
back on
Democratic
it
Party
at
toward
all.
the problems in those environments, because the problems you'll hear in those towns are very real and very different, around farmers committing suicide, and towns that are drying up. And that's where I think our energies and attention should be. I think it's one...
No, all my criticisms earlier were perfectly fucking warranted. Tucker Carlson literally just spent a minute essentially saying that the Democratic Party was full of degenerate Jews, and Yang is just going to go like, yeah, that's why I like talking to like white farmers and stuff, And to anyone who thinks that's an unfair characterization, everything Tucker Carlson just said is literally straight out of the book from every authoritarian regime's caricature of the enemy. It's always exactly like this, It's always degenerate, cosmopolitan, city-dwelling, hyper-wealthy elites over-fixated on degeneracy and sexual identity. This is like just verbatim from old Italian and Nazi fascist propaganda. It is the same stereotype every single time,
Drawback of the media-driven nature of our narratives today is one, and the media tends to be, as you know, centered in particular areas and locations.
Yes, but I've noticed that.
but it's also a relative weakness over the fact that we have these two supposedly big tent parties. They're supposed to encapsulate all of these different people and points of view, and then certain points of view just end up being much louder, really more because of, again, geography and mechanics than anything else. If you're someone who's plugged into the media networks and have very powerful social media tools in certain parts of the country, you're just going to have...
Tron Panda TKS, you write a fine line in chat, but if your memery gets you to the point where you're saying that Tucker Carlson is not a fascist, you're probably just going to catch the ban. I can only tolerate so much of that, okay? Tucker Carlson is such an obvious and direct example of this is like textbook, And the stereotype of his enemies that he has conjured, with very vivid detail too, like dozens of adjectives there. The stereotype that he conjured is picture perfect when describing like the cosmopolitan, like wealthy, foreign degenerate, basically. He said white liberal, but a foreign influence, you know what I mean? Like they're not part of America, they're like leeching off of America. You know what I mean?
More of a megaphone.
That's the second time you've mentioned social media as a driver of our political culture.
Yup.
He's not pushing back
again,
at all.
This is a world that you're
remotely
familiar with. You were in tech. How do you think social media affect our political conversation?
It's terrible, genuinely. And one of the things that studies have shown is that negative and even untrue information spreads 6 times more powerfully and quickly on social media than fact. Fact is boring, and argument and invective are intoxicating. And so you have a lot of people who then respond to those incentives and end up trying to make themselves more popular by attacking other people. There's a constant desire to tear other folks down. So there's this constant churn on social media that doesn't really lead any place terribly productive, and makes people more polarized, more negative, less solutions oriented.
Sounds like it's wrecking the country to me.
As a parent, I'm very, very concerned because, you and I are old enough, Tucker, to have grown up at a time before social media, and then we were seeing our kids on social media. And empirically, it's not great for kids in particular. You're seeing record levels of depression among teenage girls. And if you're literally just oppressing your kids, like what are we doing? And then
we don't let Philip Morris sell Marlboros to 8-year-olds. I think there's a lot of evidence your kids would be better off smoking Marlboros than going on Facebook and Instagram, and I mean that.
Okay.
So why do we allow this? Like, why shouldn't we haul those people by the nose before Congress and shut their companies down? I don't get it. As long as
What the fuck are we talking about right now? What the fuck are we doing right now?
we're going to live in a fascist country, which clearly we do, we're putting people in prison for disagreeing. So why are we letting Facebook and
What?
Google wreck our kids?
Wait, wait. What the fuck are we talking about? Who are we disagreeing on what? Who are we putting people in prison for? Disagreeing on what? What are we talking about?
I think the problem is that our government is just decades behind the curve. And so you have private companies doing what private companies do, which is they're going to maximize their own economic opportunities.
He's talking about January 6th. Yeah, that's what they got arrested for, disagreeing.
And in a way, you can't be mad at them for that because, again, like that's where their incentives are. So the problem is we have legislators who have watched all of this come up to a point where now there are these world-changing juggernauts that are distorting our democracy or worse, and we don't have a handle on what we can do about it. So I think there's a middle ground, Tucker, I think you probably would agree, between shutting these companies down and letting them run amok. And we need to try and race to that middle ground as quickly as possible because we don't have unlimited time.
No, we really don't. So since you've been a candidate twice and been the subject of an awful lot of media coverage, how do you think social media affect political coverage?
Also not great. It ends up. So I came up as
It really is amazing. He has no criticism of the Republican Party. Yeah, I have no respect for like weasels like that. I have nothing against people who will go on contentious platforms to like push forward a progressive message. So where's the progressive message? That's like the other important part. I don't have anything against people like Yang or anyone on the left or a Democrat or whatever going on Tucker Carlson's show and being amicable and civil and polite with. I do not care. I think that's fine. But you have to do it to promote a progressive message. And he can't do it. He has no pushback. He'll even agree with the comments Tucker Carlson made implicitly. Like his ridiculous caricature of the Democratic Party.
Nobody presidential candidate. So grateful to everyone who supported me and who gave me a platform, which includes you, Tucker. And I use social media to try and get my message out. And it was effective. And that message, I'm proud to say, was positive 99% of the time. Now,
a Tucker Carlson viewer has never heard about these things. Anthony, what does Andrew Yang put forward that would shock a Tucker Carlson viewer? We talked about automation. That's not like politically contentious, I don't think. We've talked about the potential for a UBI, I guess. Everyone already knew about that, but they're not even talking about a UBI for the most part. I think maybe 2 minutes of this whole thing were sent on that. So what's the rest of it been about? Like, it's not, like, what is blowing their minds right now? So, Anthony, if you want to talk after this video, then we can, okay? Just get in the Discord and be ready for it.
Unfortunately,
the points that Tucker was saying he agrees with redistribution. Yeah, but he doesn't. He's lying. That's the problem. That's why just saying this stuff isn't enough. You have to push him on it. It's not enough to come on here and let Tucker, like, play up the optics. Like, yeah, I'm totally in favor of the working class. Unless you're willing to hold him to account on the fact that he lies about it nonstop.
I think that social media ends up distorting our political coverage because of the incentives I described earlier, where you want to do something that's splashy and gets a lot of attention, which will push you toward the extremes. But also, it makes journalists get absorbed in the news cycle of the day that happens on Twitter. And I don't think that's good for our political discourse at all. I mean, if you look at the long-term problems we have around the automation of jobs or climate change or any of these big honking problems, it's not like something's going to pop up on Twitter today that's going to be like the game changer in those long-running challenges. So it's engendering this.
You don't think? I keep scrolling through my feed looking for the answer to life, and it hasn't come up yet.
Yeah, it hasn't come up for any of us yet. So it's enhancing kind of short-termism in our political discourse when we need to think much, much bigger.
Could you be a candidate for office without reading Twitter all the time?
That's a great question. I believe you could in certain instances. There are a lot of local candidates that are very successful who aren't on social media because they just get out there and talk to people. Now, is that more feasible on a local scale than national? Yeah, it is. But, a lot of action's local.
When you were running for president, how much time did you spend on social media? And be honest.
I spend a good deal of time on social media, in part because I was in a rental vehicle going from event to event in Iowa, New Hampshire. So what are you doing? You're on your phone being like, oh, let me like send something out. Let me try and interact. It was just a way to do work, really, the things you can do in your vehicle when you're going between events in New Hampshire are either call people or you do social media. So I was on it a great deal.
Do you think it was good for you?
Was it good for my
Did you get home
health?
and your wife said, you know, I think you're a better man for the time you spent on Twitter?
Well, I'm someone who's just trying to get stuff done. So like I
am excessively uninterested in this boomer talk on social media.
Much again because I'm like more confident in our ability to send people cash than I am in our ability to do a lot of other things.
But why not try something like that as opposed to just sending people checks?
I think this is a both and situation, Tucker. I would love to create a 21st century of the Civilian Conservation Corps and employ people, for example, managing our forests, which right now, unfortunately, are becoming tinderboxes because of climate change. And it's resulting in devastation in different parts of the country, particularly out west.
Which we could address with climate change bills, which party is more interested in pushing? Anything? Any actual? No? Okay.
I think that we should be doing more to rebuild our country literally. I mean, we are falling apart. But there are needs in education that we can be filling at a higher level. We should be going on a massive talent recruitment drive for any young person who wants to be able to lend a hand. There should be absolutely no barrier between them doing so. And just if you raise your hand, we should be able to put you to work doing something really positive and productive. I agree.
So I want to play, we're going to try again to play your soundbite from the mayoral race. And you basically make the point that if you live in New York City, you shouldn't have to live in fear of being attacked by the mentally ill homeless. Here's what you said.
The fact is, mentally ill homeless men are changing the character of our neighborhoods. A woman my wife Evelyn is friends with in her mom group in Hell's Kitchen was punched in the face by a mentally ill man. Sent a picture of her bruised face around the mom group, spread like wildfire. This is happening in New York City and we're not talking enough about it. Families are leaving as a result. In East Harlem, the neighborhood has been changed. Upper West Side, the neighborhood has been changed. We owe our people and our families better than this, and I'm frustrated by the political nature of these responses. I mean, we're not talking about housing affordability. We're talking about the hundreds of mentally ill...
This is the most fired up I've ever seen him say about anything, and it's about, like, what is he even advocating for? What solution does he have to the homeless problem?
People we all see around us every day on the streets and the subways. We need to get them off of our streets and our subways into a better environment. And when you ask what I'm going to do differently, I'm going to rebuild the stock of psych beds in our city. There will be no recovery until we resolve this. I will fix this, New York.
Damn.
Interesting how he was very passionate about that, but he doesn't want to commit to improving education because it's like a stereotypical politician thing, you know? Like, oh yeah, dude, fixing education, that's a pipe dream. Fixing the homeless problem, however, in New York City, of all places, oh yeah, dude, for sure. I must get real fired up about them.
Damn, that was good. I texted you right after. I was thrilled to see that. And again, I didn't think there was an ideological point. It's just like, you're the...
Not ideological at all. Can you imagine going on stage and delivering a talking point and afterwards you have a text from Tucker Carlson, like, congratulating you? Holy shit.
One guy noting the obvious, if you live in New York, this is a huge part of your life. Why did nobody else say this?
Because it's
I'm genuinely not sure, because I saw this with my family and the families around us in our part of this.
Maybe it's because your little speech there was clearly motivated by anger against the homeless people who are just victims of a system that have abused and neglected them, as opposed to genuine compassion for their suffering. Maybe it's because your only apparent motivation to deal with homelessness as an issue is the fact that they're inconveniencing non-homeless people. As opposed to because being homeless is being in a constant state of suffering. I don't know. I'm sure there's got to be some reason why people were mad at you. Not to say that there isn't a problem with homeless people, like, fucking freaking out and shit. That's a real-ass problem. Some homeless people are dangerous. That is a real, actual, existing problem that should be acknowledged and addressed. However, the problem with homeless people is a problem created by neglect towards homeless people, you know? So getting mad at homeless people as a product of the inevitable socioeconomic consequences of neglecting homeless people strikes me as double dipping a little bit. You already hated them once, huh? And you shouldn't need homeless people punching people to be like the motivation which rouses you to deal with their problems. You should have been dealing with it because they were homeless. They were already suffering.
City, and by the way, it's still very much a reality.
I know.
Like my mother is afraid to walk out of a certain number of blocks from her apartment for the same reason. So there's a lot of work to be.
Also, like, at a certain point, you have to wonder if people are overstating this. So I've never been to New York City, but as I understand it, like, the areas of New York City that have a lot of homeless people are also very densely packed in the sidewalks. You know what I mean? Like, it's human rivers of traffic. I have to wonder, like, how much people are overstating the potential harm here. I can't really speak about New York, but I did live in LA for a good long time. And while it's true that I was actually lived in Beverly Hills, which has like very few homeless people, I would go to West Hollywood and regular Hollywood all the time. And Hollywood is full of homeless people. Full of homeless people. And having been to Hollywood hundreds of times in my life, I can say with confidence that many people vastly overstate how dangerous homeless people are. Is there a problem with homeless people being violent? Yeah, that's a thing that happens, 100%. However, there is a lot of like pearl clutching that goes on where somebody hears a story about a story about a story, or like some homeless guy acts weird around them and they overstate, like, yeah, the potential threat, or homeless people are violent to each other. That gets cited by the police, and people assume every act of violence by a homeless person is directed against a non homeless person. As if that makes a difference, by the way. Like, as if that's better that they're attacking each other. But yeah. Anyway, it's a real problem, worth considering. But Andrew Yang's tone during that speech, the fact that he was motivated primarily by inconvenience towards the homed, the fact that he was so apparently angry at them, that was pretty fucking weird. And I think that contempt and disgust, exactly, Pascal, is part of the reason we have a homeless problem in this country, because we think of them as less than regular people. And that attitude is what keeps us from diverting the public funds necessary to address these issues.
Done. Again, you're right. I don't see this as terribly ideological. I see this as like a very core.
It is literally an ideological issue. Please stop jerking yourself off over how smart you are.
Experience for, unfortunately, too many people in New York City right now, and a lot of them are voting with their feet.
And by the way, for the mentally ill homeless, I'm not sure how we're serving their needs. So when you 100%. Said this, people said, "Oh, Andrew Yang hates the homeless." Well, how are we serving people with severe psychiatric conditions by letting them live on the street? I don't understand.
I completely agree. I believe I led with that in that statement. And then for whatever reason, people ignored the fact that I wanted to help the people who are struggling with mental illness into better situations. The street's no place to get well.
He was talking about helping the homeless people the same way I hear TERFs talk about helping trans people by getting them the help they need, you know? It's like a very thinly veiled, like, contempt, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, we'll help you, but by which you mean, like, get you out of my way, like, remove you from the, it's just not the tone we need for this, not the solutions we need to this.
When you said that, I think that was the most animated I saw you. I didn't watch every second of the campaign.
See,
but I paid attention because it's our biggest city and it matters, and it was an interesting campaign. What kind of, you were savage for saying that by groups that have, you know, taking a vig from homeless policy and from ideologues, they hated it. But like, how did other people respond to that?
A number of people on the street came to me and said, thank you, like, thank you for saying what was on our minds.
I bet.
I did get that a number of times on the streets in New York.
Are you going to stay in New York?
I really like, by the way, that we've had no cuts to anything else in this entire interview, but Tucker Carlson, who's agreeing with you, keeps cutting to what I assume are like video collages of mentally ill homeless people to really, yeah, just to use this poor guy to really show off the point, you know? Truly, we are truly approaching this issue in the best of faith, you know? We really want to help the homeless people. Now let's get a nice montage of how scary they are.
Well, my kids are in school there, and
That's not much of an endorsement.
we love. Well, you didn't
What the
love.
fuck is this guy even doing? He's laying down enjoying a biscuit of some kind. What? This guy, the other guy wasn't doing anything. This guy's even doing less of anything. He doesn't even look mentally unwell, and he's just laying there. What the fuck? He's just chilling. He's got a water bottle. What do you want? Yeah, we don't even know he's homeless. He could just be scruffy as shit. I don't know.
Let me finish the sentence.
sorry.
I was like, my kids are at school there, and we love
But
it.
just talking.
I have many friends and family there.
Wait. Did that guy have a shopping bag next to him? Hold on.
And we love it. And I have many friends and family.
That's a milk jug. Are these just regular groceries? Did they literally just choose a black guy? Did they literally just find a picture of a black guy? His clothes are immaculate. He has groceries next to him in a fucking carry-on bag, and his clothes are immaculate. They literally just found a fucking video of a black guy! Oh my god! Yeah, dude's just waiting for his fucking lift. And somebody took a video of him and he's on Tucker Carlson. God damn it, dude. The cart next to him is come with homeless people there. I don't even know if it's his. I don't know. I guess he could be homeless. I don't know. Do we know? Does anyone know? Well, I'll say if he is homeless, I mean, I've never seen that's the cleanest it's the cleanest clothing I've seen. I mean, he's doing a great job. I don't know. Yeah, he's assuming that gallon of milk is full. I can tell you with great confidence that I have literally never seen like a homeless person with milk. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know. Wait, guys, even if he was homeless, there's a sleeping bag next to him. It's something. I mean, it could be his, it could be not. It could just be he has a sleeping bag. We don't know. He could be going over to a friend's. I have no idea. This is a segment on like mentally ill homeless people attacking people. Does anyone think it's a little bit weird? We're just like, if I sat down, okay, look, I'm just going to say this much. I'm going to say this with absolute confidence, okay? If it was a white guy sitting here in the exact same clothing, this video would not have been used in this clip. There's literally 0% chance. 0% chance of that happening. By the way, clean shaven? Something tells me this guy has access to the interior of a home. Unless he's got some elite fucking, discarded plastic knife from Chick-fil-A, that's not clean shaven, lol. Here? It looks clean here, doesn't it? It looks like he has a goatee. I can't tell. Yeah, I guess it's hard to tell with the shadow. He has a white beard. All right, I think we're getting too into the weeds here. To me, it looks like the sides of his face are shaved, but I don't mean fully shaven. I mean clean shaven. Anyway, look, I just don't think that if he was white, this would not. I don't know.
There, so we'll be there trying to make things better in our own way.
So I just can't overstate this, went from...
I'm just saying, I've seen way scarier looking homeless people in Hollywood like every fucking day, all the goddamn time. Also, our understanding of homeless people can mean like very different things, okay? Like in Los Angeles, there are a lot of homeless people that are just fucking lost. You know what I mean? Like in Hollywood or in like near Skid Row and shit, there are people that are, and I'm saying this with the greatest of sympathy and respect imaginable, okay? Because this is a societal failure, all right? But these people walk around like zombies sometimes. Like no food, they're in bad shape. Like mentally like gone because like their life is just like they're in hell. Like basically 24/7, And I've seen homeless people in encampments up in Humboldt who are just regular fucking dudes who just don't have a house. You know what I mean? They've got a phone with a charger that they charge at the library. They've got like clothes that they like clean at like laundromats and food that they buy from like grocery marts that they keep in like mini fridges that they stock with like generators, or they live in their car and like stuff like that, There's a ton of variety in what we're talking about when we talk about homeless people. It's usually the former group that we talk about when we think of like violent homeless people, but I think they're probably I can't say that they're a minority. They're at the very least, they're not representative of the entire homeless situation.
From national anonymity, a lot of friends, coworkers, but not a national presence.
Like popular guy and like
to running for president, having your own kind of internet cult, the Yang Gang around you. Did you ever get them to like paint your house or do anything
Gosh, no, Tucker. That's so.
I wonder, like, what? I wonder what it would be like to have your own, group of acolytes as you did. But anyway, that was,
again, super grateful to everyone who supported my campaign
course.
to try and.
So that was your first moment in politics, was as a presidential candidate. Then you ran again for mayor of our biggest city. So you're probably not going to recede into anonymity again, I wouldn't think. As James Carville once said to me, the thing about running for office is it's kind of like having sex. Once you do it, you kind of want to do it again.
Is that what having sex is like? I think most people want to have sex before they have sex too. If you think the unique thing about having sex is that it makes you want to do it again, I think people usually want to have sex before they have sex too. I can speak with my memory as a 13-year-old boy that I wanted to have sex before. Yeah, maybe Tucker's a virgin, or maybe Tucker was like, like the good baby boy Christian social programming was so much, and when he finally lost his virginity at like 32, he was like, oh shit, this kind of slaps actually. Yeah, there are a million better examples you could draw there, like eating Pringles, like smoking crack. Yeah, once you do it once, you want to do it again. I don't know.
So I think that's true. What are you running for next?
I am trying to bring our country back together. And we can see that polarization is getting worse and worse because of the media and social media and political incentives you and I talked about, and I talk about in my book, Forward. So I am starting a new popular, inclusive movement that's going to welcome independents, Democrats, and Republicans alike to advance real electoral reform and solutions that are going to give rise, hopefully, to a middle ground in American politics and a greater diversity of points of view. Because right now, this duopoly is not working for any of us. It's not working for Democrats, Republicans, or independents. And so this is my new project, the Forward Party. Not left or right, but forward.
This is literally the golden mean fallacy, is it not? The idea that that the best solution must necessarily be in the center. We just don't need the right. We just need to keep the left, ditch the right, and then have another, even more left party. And then we need to ditch the existing left party, the Democrats, and then only have the very left party and a very, very left party. And then, you'll never guess what I want after that. We ditch the very left party, get rid of that, the very, very left party becomes the regular left party, and then we have a very, very, very left party, and then the real battle begins. That's what we need, folks. Absolutely.
That's a third party.
It is a third party, yes. Though,
like all the fucking Yang gangers in chat who were freaking out the other day at me calling the Forward Party a party when it's literally going to be a party.
So it's starting out as a PAC because you don't actually become a political party on day one. You have to do a bunch of stuff.
Well, sure. I mean, systems. Ted Kaczynski, I have to say, has written very convincingly on this. The Unabomber. Bad person, but a smart analysis, I think, of the way systems work. And his argument is that large organizations over time morph into purely self-preservation projects. Like a big system in the end protects itself, and that's kind of...
I don't think Ted Kaczynski was the only person who said that. I think this is fundamentally an anarchist critique that Ted Kaczynski, paraphrased, but...
all it does. So our two-party system is certainly in that category. There are so many barriers to starting a viable third party. It hasn't been done. Why can you do it?
I'd love to go into the history and background a bit, which you probably know better than I do. But if you look at the Constitution, there's nothing about political parties, or otherwise. And if you look at the writings of the Founding Fathers, they feared factionalism that didn't fluctuate, which is exactly what we have with this duopoly. If they were to wake up and see what was happening now, they would be shocked and horrified. And when you look at Americans around the country, 57% at this point want a third party. 60% think both parties are out of touch. If you were an entrepreneur, as I am, if you arrived on a market and said, hey, there's this dysfunctional duopoly and over half of people want a new alternative, you'd say, oh, let me create a new alternative. The problem is what you just described, Tucker, is that it is now structurally nearly impossible to create a new alternative. So I'm
not going to disagree that having third or multiple parties would be better than what we have now.
Sort of an irresistible force and an immovable object.
Yes, though I think it could be done. it seems to me the pressure is going to come from the lifestyle liberals from the group in Williamsburg, just because they're the ones who mean it the most. Their whole identity is wrapped up in this weird evangelical religion they have. And so I wonder, like, the second from the lifestyle liberals from the group in Williamsburg, just because they're the ones who mean it the most. Their whole identity is wrapped up in this weird evangelical religion they have.
You literally represent the evangelical religious group in this country. They all vote Republican. The literal evangelicals all vote Republican. What he's talking about, the religion that he's referring to here is wokeism. That's the religion he's referring to. Is Williamsburg seriously like a major Jewish community? Are there let me see if there's like a religious demographic. Hold on. Hasidic Jewish community. Williamsburg is inhabited by tens of thousands of Hasidic Jews of various groups. Its Satmar population numbers are around 57,000. Damn, that's like a third of the entire. That's a third of the entire population. Jesus Christ. And that's just that group of Jewish people, not the. Well, I don't know.
And so I wonder, like, the second a third party is, forces people to buy into like radical trans ideology or whatever, like, you can change your sex by saying so. That's insane.
Nobody says you can change your sex by saying so. I have heard zero people say this. Yang's not going to push back on this at all, is he?
Of course, it's not science. But like, that's a tough place for you because you have to take a stand on that issue. And the second you do, you alienate people. Like, you can't kind of get around that, can you? It's an acid test.
The Forward Party stands for a group of principles I think the vast majority of Americans will be excited about. And the first is...
This is so fucking indefensible. Who is the who's the person I'm talking to after this? Like, how can you think that he's responsibly using this platform that you're getting, when he refuses to push back against any of the bullshit that Tucker Carlson is saying?
Is open primaries and ranked choice voting to enable diverse points of view. So anyone who is sick of the duopoly, even if you aren't a huge Yang fan, you should be for the Forward Party just because we're going to actually change the process so that new parties can emerge. So that's number one. Number two is fact-based governance. We really should just be trying to measure...
fact-based governance or fact-based capitalism? When I looked at his... Wait. When we watched Andrew Yang's Forward Party promotional video, this said fact-based governance, not capitalism. Did Fox News change it to say capitalism? Or not Fox News, but Tucker Carlson Today? Did they change it? They were like, governance, capitalism, eh? Did Yang change it? I want to know who was responsible for this word getting changed.
What's actually happening.
It says capitalism on the website. Does it really? The fact that he is just flippantly mixing up governance and capitalism is pretty telling, I think, Damn, people are roasting Yang in the fucking quote retweets. Whatever.
On the ground as opposed to who's winning the argument of the day.
Don't we have to agree on what the facts are, though?
Well, and that's one of the reasons I think the Forward Party is important, is because anyone who's a member of the Forward Party will say, look, we can try and agree on what the central facts are so we can have disciplined conversations and arguments instead of just...
Wow, thanks for the solution to disinfo and media, Yang. Well, join the Forward Party, because in the Forward Party, we'll all know what the truth is.
Just shouting at each other. Again, this wants to be the middle ground for the country. Effective and modern government, one of the big frustrations is what you just described, Tucker, is that just stuff's not working very well. And you can see when you're on your phone and you're banking, you're like, okay, my bank has their act together. And then when you interact with the government, sometimes it's a very different experience. And then when someone comes to the government and says, hey, we want to do this stuff, you're like, wait a minute, I'm not sure.
Okay, no, yeah. On the website, it says fact-based governance, human-centered capitalism. So Tucker Carlson Today must have changed it to fact-based capitalism.
Like, you guys are actually up for what you're saying you want to be up for. So modernizing our government, making it more effective. Grace and tolerance, which is that we should be able to sit with anyone else no matter their point of view, and have a reasonable discussion with them, and not
Yes.
have people attack you for saying, oh, you sat with someone who, you know, I disagree with on X and Y. How are we ever going to make progress as a country if we cannot sit with people we disagree with? Like what kind of strange...
I could never imagine how arrogant you would have to be to believe that you can address the problems with a country or even propose reasonable solutions when this is the kind of vapid tech world bullshit that you default to. It's so fucking disgusting. Holy shit. Well, we should be pro-facts, not pro-not facts. We should do things that are good, not bad. We should, like, be nice to each other. Like, holy fuck. This is what non-ideological politicking gets you. Absolute meaninglessness. Directionless bullshit. And the only thing that he's accomplishing in this interview is leading independents over to the right. Because he is ultimately a tool for the right at this point. Nobody is getting moved over to the left by Andrew Yang sitting here and agreeing with Tucker Carlson saying that the Democrats are the spawn of Satan or whatever.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. That's why I'm sitting with you and you with me.
Yes.
But you will take, you know, for the crime of sitting at a table with America's foremost white supremacist, you're going to take a lot of crap, obviously, for doing this interview. But you clearly don't care, I guess.
Well, again, you have to send a message that we're never going to make progress if we're not willing to talk to each other. And that's what the Forward Party is going to be about. I ran for president as a Democrat. I'm now an independent. I will talk to anyone who wants to actually make our lives better and solve the problems that are getting worse around us. We do not have unlimited time. This country is not doing well. You're a parent, I'm a parent. We have to try and make this country stronger and more whole for our next generation, or we will have failed them. I just see myself as a parent trying to do the right thing for my family, your family, every family in this country.
Where are you in the Bill of Rights, on the U.S. Bill of Rights?
Where
As a lawyer. Yeah, well, no, I'm serious. I mean, does it have the meaning that it had when you were a kid? That your freedom to say what you think is absolute, your right to defend yourself is God-given and protected by the government, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you can just go down through the whole list.
Okay.
I am a huge believer in individual liberty and freedom as enumerated in the Bill of Rights. I think right now we're getting bogged down because there's this new public square in social media that is run by private companies. It's a recent invention. And I do think applying the First Amendment to what's happening on social media is a strange framework, because the First Amendment says the government will not abridge your ability to speak. And then we're treating Facebook like it's the government. And right now it obviously is not. So you would need to try and sit down, in my view, with government, social media companies, nonprofits, and media companies to try and hash out rules of the road. I think that's where you were driving with that question.
High energy.
I'm not sure if that was.
Yes, I mean,
the things I do think we're overstating, and this is something I disagree that you and I don't see eye to eye on. Is that I think that we have these major problems coming that we're going to need to come together and solve, whether it's social media, climate.
Thank you, Yang. Finally, at the end of the interview, you summon the spine to say, here's something you and I might disagree on. I think we should be nice to each other and get along and form solutions. Thank you, Yang. Thank you so fucking much for finally challenging the grand poobah of conservative media pundits. Thank you so much. It took you all interview, but you finally did it. You finally gotten Tucker Carlson on his being a big meanie stance.
Climate change, like these things, and that collective action in some cases might impinge upon what someone thinks of as like an individual freedom. For example, let's say like, you know, posting something on social media that other people like find objectionable or hateful. This to me is something that we can come together and collectively solve for, and not just have it say like everyone can do whatever they want as long as it's, you know, like in the communication realm.
What the fuck are you talking about?
There should be some rules of the road again.
Well, there always have been.
Yeah, there always have been. Like it's never been legal to, you know, like run into certain places and say certain things.
But the strike zone's been pretty wide since Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1967. I mean, I think the Supreme Court pretty much did, I don't think they did say freedom of speech applies to virtually everything except imminent exhortations to violence.
Yeah, and so this is the point I was trying to make, is that right now there's a concern that the government's going to squelch our ability to say certain things.
Right. Oh, there's a concern, yes. I would say there's a concern, yes.
Yes. And I think that right now we're in the midst of cacophony and chaos in the form of social media that's literally making our kids sad and depressed.
Yes.
And so if you look at these sets of problems,
Holy fuck, he's so boring to listen to.
Given the fact that communication is so disaggregated at this point.
Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we'll...
Cool. Why do people even like Yang? Because they think they're smarter than the political system. VOWSH, you think you're smarter than the political system? No, I think I'm smarter than people in the political system. I don't think I'm smarter than the system. The system isn't intelligent. There's no way of outsmarting the system. It's just how intelligently you navigate it. Why does this always take so long? It's so easy to navigate Discord. Shouldn't a tech-proficient Yang fan be able to effortlessly navigate these tech obstacles?
As James Carville once said to me, the thing about running for office is it's kind of like having sex.